Hey, sounds like a great title for a horror movie.
What's up, people? Welcome back to Glen's Reviews from Mistress Peace Theater, where we talk about anything that's horror-related, but mostly nerdy shit. And I realized when I was putting together my Day of the Triffids review that I haven't done any more comic book reviews since Season 1. I don't know why, I just never got around to it, but that all changes today because we're going to be looking at this awesome story right here. The Iron Man Demon in a Bottle 9-part story that was written and illustrated back in 1979, all thrown together into one awesome graphic novel. Graphic novels are the way to go, I have to say. I really do like this. The writers and illustrators and inkers and everything, they put alternate comic book covers and alternate artwork in these, and it's just a nice way to go back to the old stories. If you haven't read each issue or you haven't got a back issue or whatever, it's just nice to have these. They may be pricey, but they're worth the money, I do have to say. Now, I kind of use this show as a way to tie up loose ends from my childhood. Movies I haven't seen, movies that I didn't finish, or comic books, or cartoons, or toys, video games that I haven't looked at, whatever, and it's kind of a way to look at them through adult eyes and kind of give them one last perspective before I kind of just move on with my life. Even though I kind of don't move on with some of these things. I revisit them later even after I do these videos. But it's nice closure. The videos are closure on some of these things. And this story is actually no different. Now, back when I was about 5 years old or so, my Grandpa Eggert on my mom's side of the family passed away and left me a huge collection of comic books from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and I was depressed a lot of my childhood. I was a fat kid, I stuck out like a sore thumb, and I probably smelled bad too, and it was really fucking weird. So these comic books I spent hours and hours reading. They were my escapism. They gave me something to aspire to look forward to. A lot of my moral compass that stuck with me came from these comic books, and these comic books primarily led to my drawing ability later on in life. All the artwork you see in my videos or around my apartment when you're watching my videos, anything like that, or on my Facebook, Instagram, DeviantArt, whatever. It all came from this, as well as cartoons and whatnot. But growing up, I primarily liked Batman, the X-Men. Those are my favorite superheroes. Mainly Spider-Man. That was my all-time favorite one. Back then, I really didn't know who Iron Man was and didn't really have much of an appreciation for him. Now, my grandpa had the first issue of this story in his collection, and I read it, but I wasn't impressed. I didn't think much of Iron Man back then and didn't see the potential of what he would become later in the movies. And the first person he battles in the first issue was a guy named Namor the Submariner. Namor? I don't fucking know how to pronounce it. Anyway, he's pretty much Marvel's version of Aquaman. Anyway, Namor is actually a good guy, but accidentally brings down a plane Tony Stark was on after he threw a tank in the air while he was fighting the oil tycoon soldiers in a fight resulting from Namor being pissed that these guys were polluting the water and the island this old man were living on. At the time, I was bored with it and didn't look any further into the story, as I couldn't really relate to Tony Stark on any level, and I thought Namor was really lame. But that would all change some 30 years later when I came to realize who or what the villain of the story actually was. Okay. These stories were written and drawn back in 1979, so when I show you pages from these stories, you kind of have to set aside what you've come to expect and what you've accepted from Iron Man from watching the movies. Not really going to be easy when you take a closer look at this. Tony Stark, Iron Man, he's less Robert Downey Jr. in this and more Tom Selleck-ish. Pepper Potts isn't in this story, but an agent named Bethany Cabe, who looks and acts pretty similar, but is a lot hotter than Gwyneth Paltrow, in my opinion. Jim Rhodes, Rhodey is in it and kicks ass, but he's not really Don Cheadle-ish. I'd argue he's more masculine than Cheadle. Jarvis is Tony's butler in this and not his artificially intelligent supercomputer that controls his home and security. He's got an old snippy secretary named Mrs. Arbogast, and there's no arc reactor in his chest or anywhere to be seen. In the original story, Tony and the American soldiers were attacked in Vietnam, and the first Iron Man suit acted as an artificial heart somehow until he could escape back to the United States and have the shrapnel in his system surgically removed. The rest of the story follows Tony on a journey of dramatic ups and downs that challenge who he is as not just Tony Stark, but Iron Man and a superhero as well, coming off of a failed relationship, fighting a guy named Spymaster, and finding out S.H.I.E.L.D. bought a majority of stocks in Stark International. So he has a lot on his plate already. Naturally, a lot of us adults would turn to the sauce for a little bit of relief and escapism. But this whole book wouldn't have been named after the last issue in the series if the sauce hadn't have manifested itself into said demon further on down the road. Tony's alcoholism permeates as his problems become worse and worse. For starters, his suit begins mysteriously malfunctioning periodically, making his duties as a superhero rather difficult. Even after intense training, he still couldn't find the cause of his suit's failures. He gets attacked by some F-lister villains while out on a date at a luxurious casino hotel. Blizzard, Melter, and Whiplash. Some of the laziest and cheesiest villains in Marvel's roster. Although they nearly do Stark in, until Beth helps out by showing off her skills as well as her assets. God damn, I have to say Marvel Comics knew how to write and draw women back in the 70s and 80s. Not this fucking garbage they're pushing nowadays.
Better get a bucket, I'm gonna throw up.
A woman with no superpowers and armed with only a high-quality revolver and a block of wood saved Iron Man's ass from some high-powered goons. Although Stark may not have needed the help to begin with, had he not been hitting up the bubbly a little hard earlier on in the date. Stark begins drinking more and more on a regular basis from here and begins having trouble doing his other normal activities like inventing cool tech. The shit really hits the fan though when Tony's suit malfunctions bad at a foreign relations contract signing ceremony. Whew. Say that 10 times fast. Between the U.S., Stark International, and the ambassador of Carnelia. As if things could not get any worse for our beloved hero. Now, I know the artwork isn't as detailed or as polished or as snazzy as modern artwork in comic books today, but this scene is pretty fucking powerful, I have to say. I love this. Tony convinces the police and government to leave him go to find out who or what is behind the suit malfunctioning, so long as he agrees to turn in the Iron Man suit in the meantime. Well, the rest of Tony's day goes as well as you'd think. He drinks all night and gets into a fight with Beth and sends her away. Regardless of the boozing, Tony carries on and vows to find out what actually happened with his suit. Knowing he's going to run into trouble, he trains with Captain America to build his skill with self-defense and hand-to-hand combat. He even calls upon Scott Lang, Ant-Man himself, to break into Rikers Island to interrogate Whiplash on info on who's possibly sabotaging his suit. That doesn't look like Paul Rudd, by the way. And it turns out the man at the center of Tony's suit going haywire is none other than Justin Hammer of Hammer Industries, who no doubt was supposed to be Peter Cushing. There's no doubt in my mind. Good old Grand Moff Tarkin himself. And not played by this guy.
You got any cigarettes? Regular or menthol?
Tony and Rhodey head to Monaco after Ant-Man reveals where Hammer is, and once there, Tony and Rhodey have to use their own wits to defend themselves against Hammer's guards, but at the end of it, Hammer succeeds in abducting Tony. After Hammer dumps some exposition of his evil plans, Tony attempts to escape only to find out that he's actually on a huge island boat thing. Hammer reveals he was behind the hiring of Blizzard, Melter, and Whiplash, as well as a whole brigade of some of the sorriest looking fucks for villains you'd ever see, right down to their very names.
Not a great plan.
Stiletto, who throws knives. Discus, who throws discs, and he's also Stiletto's brother. Beetle, who has super-powered suit thing that barely resembles a beetle. Leapfrog, who has a super-powered suit that allows him to jump high. Constrictor, who has special coils that can constrict things. Spymaster, who's a master at espionage, disguise, and strategy. Melter can, of course, melt shit, and Blizzard can, of course, freeze shit. The saddest and pathetic is Porcupine, who is supposed to have more formidable weaponry than what's shown here. We have Water Wizard. Yes, that's actually his name, go look it up. Who can psychokinetically control all forms of liquid within 500 feet. But even he knows he sucks and says, fuck it, I'm out of here once Tony suits up before the battle even begins. The only one who seems like she'd be a worthy adversary is Mankiller due to her superhuman strength and pin particle-fueled gauntlet, allowing her to grow giant or shrink. But once Tony gets a spare suit from Hammer's lab, they all go out like little bitch pussies. With Tony having destroyed Hammer's island boat thing and turning Hammer's lead scientist into the police, he's able to exonerate and clear Iron Man's good name, but not everyone rushes back to trusting him, breaking Tony worse than before and sending him further into a downward spiral where his alcoholism takes full control. Where he then fucks up another chance to be with Beth and gets upset and picks up a hooker, nearly destroys his relationship with his butler and good friend Jarvis, and nearly loses himself altogether and nearly hurts a bunch of civilians by trying to lift a train car out of a wreck, but was too drunk to assess the situation properly and accidentally drops it. Knowing Tony is in trouble, Beth returns to help Tony after first telling Tony how her first husband succumbed to his own battle against drug abuse. Having gone through withdrawals myself in life, this scene really resonated with me. It really tore at my heartstrings. After a hard night of withdrawals going without the alcohol, at the end, Tony fixes things with Beth and Jarvis and vows to reclaim the shares in his company. And when he's faced with falling back into his old ways, he chooses to leave the bottle behind and deal with his own problems head-on without the influence. And beneath the suit, a man who seemingly had it all being crushed beneath the weight of hardship, broken trust, turmoil, attacks to his credibility and legacy, an identity crisis, succumbing to the only thing that made sense. The only thing that would seemingly end the stress and pain, only to hit rock bottom and have to claw his way back up. Not a perfect man, but a flawed man who still wanted to save others despite not being able to save himself. Until the demon grew out of control and he knew something had to be done. I know what you're probably all wondering. Glenn, what did this really have to do with horror? You're kind of on a horror television show here. Well, coming from experience, I can honestly tell you there's nothing more horrific than when you've let yourself hit up the bottle so much and you've allowed your body and mind to actually become dependent on a drug just to stay normal and to escape your everyday problems that you should be dealing with head on your own. And this is coming from the most hopeless person on earth here.
I'm the most screwed up person in the world.
I've had a huge problem with drinking most of my life. Every time the chips were down, I'd always reach for the bottle. It's an easy way to not have to face my problems. And sometimes it was because of boredom, and sometimes it's because I just wanted to have fun. But there was a lot of times in my life I just really didn't want to face how depressed I was and how miserable I was. And it was just always easier getting lost in a nice bottle of beer or a bottle of Jack Daniels, whatever the case. Old Thompson, Blatz, all that really awful, cheap crap, too.
Who are you?
I don't know.
Anyway, I've admitted it many times that I have a problem. I still have a problem. But back in 2018, I really tried to leave alcohol behind for good. That's when I picked this book up, and it really helped. I went to AA meetings, I got a therapist, I sought out religion, is what you're kind of supposed to do after admitting that you have a problem. It's like something to fill a void, I guess, but I just really tried turning away from it. And I won't lie, I was doing good for the longest time. Some relationship problems kind of threw me off track and family members dying, but I really did good for the longest time. I fell off, I started drinking again off and on, but this book always helped me pick myself back up and clean myself back up and go forward from there. I'm making a valiant effort. And I just had this weird, strange feeling when I picked this book up at about 5 years old that it didn't mean anything to me at the time, but it was just a weird example of foreshadowing. It's like the book didn't mean anything to me at the time, but it would mean something to me later, years later, when I actually needed it the most. And I'm glad I picked it back up and read it because it really did help me out. So what are my thoughts on this comic book? What's my grade? Big fat fucking A++. I really do love this comic book. It really has become something special to me, something I can always look back on that can help me out of anything. I love the artwork. I've always loved comic book artwork from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, all the way up to its inevitable woke destruction in the mid-2000s. when comic books were destroyed completely by identity politics and social justice and all that dumb shit. But way back when nobody was talking about the dangers of alcoholism, this little risk that Bob Layton and David Michelini proposed to Marvel paid off in a pretty big way. I mean, everybody loved this story when they thought nobody was going to buy comic books, Iron Man comic books, after this. So, great fucking job. Kudos to you guys. Now, I know all of you are used to the movies, and it's probably hard looking back at these cheesy, corny-looking comic books, but you wouldn't have all the awesome shit in these movies if it wasn't for these comic books. And these stories, they're awesome, they're classic, they're timeless, and they're meaningful. This is what helped me cement Iron Man in as one of my favorite superheroes of all time, along with Batman and Spider-Man and the X-Men. Okay, before I end the episode, I didn't want this video coming off sounding like a PSA. I'm not telling you to not drink. We're all adults here. I'm not one to judge. I'm not in a place to judge anybody. And it's not my place or anyone else's place to tell you what you should be putting in your body or not putting in your body. That kind of applies to something else that's going on in the country right now. I'm looking at you, Joe Biden. We won't get into that. I'm still going to have drinks once in a while, on occasion, with friends or, special times. Whatever. I like to have things that are bad for me. I'm still going to eat chocolate. I'm still going to eat Ruffles potato chips. I'm still going to drink soda on occasion. But moderation is the key word here. I mean, anything is dangerous if you have too much of it, and alcohol is a prime example. Especially if you're using it to escape problems that you should be facing sober, or just trying to escape life or trying to escape pain. And this next point may be a little bit controversial, but it's my opinion, so I apologize if you don't like the words that are about to come out of my mouth, but it's what I think. I don't like referring to alcoholism and being addicted to alcohol as a disease. It's hard for me to actually call it a disease.
Dad, what the hell are you doing? Dad, it's the middle of the day. I thought you weren't going to drink as much anymore.
No, Stan, you don't understand. I have a disease. Daddy's very sick.
What? Did you go to your AA meeting?
Yes, they're the ones that told me. I thought I could just quit drinking on my own, but it's an illness, son. I have to admit that I'm powerless to this terrible disease.
Because I believe everyone has willpower in them to kick the habit. I did it on many occasions. I'm only human. I've fallen a few times. But when I really needed to, for my own health, for the sake of everyone around me, to keep my goddamn job, I was able to find the willpower to just stop doing it, whether it was cold turkey or just a gradual step towards giving up alcohol. It's difficult. I know it is. I've been left with nothing. I've slept in ditches, okay? I have lived a less than glamorous life at times, and it's because of, boozing it up and binge drinking and trying to escape my problems in my life that way. It hasn't been a pretty sight, but I was always able to pick myself back up, and I really do believe everyone's got that amount of willpower in them.
Thanks, Dad.
And I'd like to end this little speech with what David Michelini wrote in the introduction to this book. We can all be heroes. It's just a matter of choice. Well, I love you guys, but that is all the time I have left for this episode of Glen's Reviews. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm sorry if I got a little bit preachy near the end. This was kind of a personal one for me. So, I will see you guys in the next video, whatever video that may be. I love you guys. Take care. I'll see you later. And I realized when I was putting together a whole collection of comic books, a whole tub of them from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and this is actually, and I read a lot of them. Shit, I gotta restart that because a huge part of my moral compass, shit. I just want to fucking record this. Why the fuck can't I remember my fucking lines? Now, these comic books were written and drawn back in 1979, so when I show you pages from this story... damn it. It is your right to put in your body, or not put in your body, anything that you choose to or not put... Alright, well, before I end the episode, I didn't want this video coming off sounding like a PSA. We're all adults here, and it's... Damn it. Oh, I'm getting sick of this. I can't fucking spit out anything.